Most killers will commit their crime and make a run for it. But there are those who feel the need to do some pretty creepy things with the bodies of the deceased. They will often hide the corpse, thinking that they are somehow more clever than the police. Sometimes they will keep the dead close by, or even underfoot. There is no telling why some murderers feel the need to hide their victims when, as history shows us, many bodies are discovered and their murderers are eventually caught. Victims on this list were no exception. However, the gruesome acts perpetrated on their bodies were the stuff of nightmares. So here, without further ado, here are 10 creepy things killers have done to dead bodies. Number 10. Her son was close by. Out of London in 1946 came the news of a mother's terrible loss. Miss Bursford owned a home and rented rooms out to lodgers. Her son Harry was a 19-year-old soldier. One day, Harry stopped by his mother's home and met Cheminot, a lodger who seemed to think he was king of Miss Bursford's house. There must have been some dispute because Harry was never seen alive again. After some time passed, Harry was listed as a deserter, but his mother could scarcely believe it. Maybe he was hiding in his bedroom, she thought. After all, her lodger Cheminot kept her son's bedroom door locked and prevented her from entering it. After 2 months had passed, Miss Bursford forced the bedroom door open. She could not see her son in the room, but she did see a loose floorboard. She lifted the floorboard and put her hand inside. She thought he felt a knee, but she wasn't sure. The mother revisited the room several more times and began to notice a disagreeable smell. She finally realized the awful truth and informed the police. Cheminot was arrested, charged with murder, and sent to trial. Number 9. Neatly cut and wrapped. In the early 20th century, when a woman committed murder, it was a shocking event because most people felt that a woman couldn't commit such a heinous crime. No. In 1915, Miss Mary Paminus allowed a crippled peddler into her apartment while her husband was away. The peddler, Michelle Weston, threatened to reveal to her husband some very personal letters she had written, and it was enough to send her into a panic and murder the man. So his name is Michael. Let's see where we're okay. Normally, when someone commits a murder, they either go on the run or they get rid of the body. Miss Paminus did neither. Instead, she dragged the body into her bedroom and stuffed it in the box couch. That night, after her husband returned home, they both slept in the bedroom where the body was hidden. It's gross. The next day, while her husband was out of the apartment, Miss Paminus pulled the body out of the box couch. She then proceeded to chop the corpse up into little pieces, wrap each piece neatly in newspaper, and place them back into the box couch. The next day, while her husband... The night after her husband returned home... Okay, there we go, okay. Being ever busy, Miss Paminus rented a new apartment that same day and arranged for a new truck to be delivered so that she could move the body parts. Next song, please. Anyway. The only problem was that she wanted to make a run for it, and she told her husband when she had done that night. Being apparently a good man, her husband spent the rest of the night begging her to surrender to the police. By day 3, she was in the police station and confessed to all the gruesome details. Number 8. In the cupboard. Dr. Pierre Bolgrat had a medical practice in Marseilles, France, back in 1925, and by all outward appearances, he seemed to be an upstanding citizen until his money problems got the best of him. First, the doctor cheated on his wife and eventually divorced her, the daughter of another doctor from another woman. As with almost all new marriages, things were great at first, but their spending habits exceeded his income, and soon he was accused of writing bad checks. At his practice, there were other weird things happening. For example, one of his patients, a young man named Jacques Ruminet, stopped by to visit him, and he was never seen again. Another patient, a woman, came forward and claimed that the doctor had tried to poison her after she had lent him a sizable amount of money. As suspicions began to reach the ears of the police, officers went to arrest Dr. Bograt for writing a series of bad checks. With him in their custody, they searched his office. Nothing seemed out of order, except for the strange damp spot along one of the walls. Curiosity was piqued, and the police stripped the wallpaper back to discover a hidden cupboard. They opened it, and out fell the body of young Jacques Rumidet. The young man's wallet, said to have contained a large sum of cash, was missing. How did you know? The doctor, of course, had an excuse for the body in the cupboard. He claimed the young man had come to him worried about having lost a large sum of money. He asked me to lend him the money. I did my best to calm him and left the surgery for a few minutes, and when I came back he was dead. I was afraid I would have been accused of his murder, so I hid the body in the cupboard, which I papered over. Dr. Bograt was arrested. He awaited trial. The police found evidence that he may have also murdered a cook, an American bar manager, and a hospital nurse. Number 7. The Telltale Stench. Fred Eschel of St. Paul, Minnesota, was a drunk and an ex-convict. He also couldn't survive without stealing from others, and one day he found himself the perfect victim. Oh, it's a cat. I don't know what the hell she's doing. Fred met and murdered St. Paul ragpicker inside the victim's shack in 1908, blowing off the top of his head with a shotgun. You know how that looks. Mutilated. It was alleged that Fred took $70 from the victim's pocket, and then he buried the body under the shack's floorboards. Without skipping a beat, Fred made himself right at home. He ate the victim's food and slept in his shack with the dead body beneath his feet. Oh, God. Before long, people became suspicious, and while Fred was out, the police raided the home and discovered the victim's body. Fred was captured and confessed to the murder, claiming that he could not be held fully responsible for the murder because he was drunk. When he asked about the money, Fred said it did him little good. A pickpocket stole the money shortly after the murder, while Fred was again drunk out of his mind, you know what I'm saying? Number 6, molten lead. Pierre Vorbeau was known by his acquaintances to be a bit of an oddball. But they never expected there was a monster within the man until 1869. Vorbeau needed money, as always, and borrowed a large sum from Mr. Bodassi. The frick kind of name is that? Knowing that he could not pay the old man back, he did the next best thing. Varro invited Badassi over to his Paris apartment for coffee. I knew it was French. Upon Badass's arrival, Varro hit him with a flat iron and cut his throat. He then dissected the body and dumped some of its parts into a nearby well. In an effort to prevent the police from ever identifying Badassi, Barbu took the decapitated head and poured molten lead into the mouth and ears. He later sank the head to the bottom of the sign. I don't know what that means. Fortunately, Barbu was discovered and confessed to his gruesome crime. It was believed that he may have committed 10 previous murders as well, but it was never thoroughly proven. Barbu, while awaiting trial, managed to slit his throat using a knife that had been hidden inside a loaf of bread. See, kids, don't trust loaves of bread. Make sure you check it before you look, because there could be knives. Number 5, self-defense, ? The police searched for Mrs. Winnie Ruth Jude for five days following the discovery of 2 women she accused of murdering back in 1931. Unbeknownst to the authorities, she was hiding among the coffins in an undertaker's establishment until, starved and frightened, she decided to turn herself into the Los Angeles police. According to Miss Judd, or Jude, however the frick you say Judd. I mean, I don't know how the heck to say it, so I don't know what you say, you know what I mean? She had gotten into an argument with her friends after a night of partying. I'm going to turn this music off because this is annoying. There we go. Music off. According to Miss Jude, she had gotten into an argument with her friends after a night of partying. One of the women pulled out a gun and shot Miss Jude through the hand. She wrestled with the 2 women and got the gun away from them. At that point, she shot them both. Miss Jude, if her story was true, she could have gone straight to the police at that moment, but she did not. Instead, she hacked the woman into pieces, placed them into travel trunks, and while wearing a disguise, booked the trunks onto the Southern Pacific Railway. Number 4, sewn in place. The scene outside of Dungong, New South Wales in 1909 was unbelievable. A man had come across a bulky bag in a creek and went to check it out. After a moment of poking and prodding, he realized it was a dead body and sent for the police. The police were in for one heck of a gruesome shock. Inside cement bags, there were sewn together was a blanket sewn over the body of a middle-aged man. Huh? The man wore only a flannel undershirt, and the back of his head had been smashed in with a pick. His face was a battered mess, and his jaw was broken. As if that weren't enough to kill the man, the victim's throat had been sliced ear to ear. His arms and legs were mutilated, and the bones were broken so that the body could be doubled up and sewn into the blanket and bags. It took a bit of time, but the victim was eventually identified as a local laborer. Interviews with potential witnesses led the police to the alleged murderer, which could be at your doorstep right now. But considering that it was in 1909, I doubt that he's at your doorstep unless she is at your doorstep. This person could be extremely old. This person could have been born in like 1900s and be like a 9-year-old murderer. Or maybe a 15-year-old murderer. You never know. You know what I'm saying? Hey. Number 3, left in a cloakroom. In 1924, Charles Travis, age 21, was an American on vacation with his wife in London. They had their 10-month-old son, I don't know what just happened there, with them. But the young couple were not fit for the duties of parents. The child, Dean, cried quite often during the night while they were in London. The doctor was called in, and the father insisted that the baby had scarlet fever. But the doctor assured him that his son was healthy and merely had some mild skin irritation. For another 3 weeks, the child would cry at night, as most young children do, but the father had enough of it. One night, Charles awoke to the crying, got out of bed, and went to the child's room. Looking down upon his son, he placed his hand over the child's mouth, squeezed his nose shut, and pressed down on his windpipe until the child ceased to breathe. Oh my God, seriously? The next morning, Charles put the child's body into a kit bag and left on a train to Birmingham, where he dropped the bag off at a cloakroom, gave a false name, and returned by train to London. Later that evening, Charles sent a telegram to his parents stating that his son had died from scarlet fever. Meanwhile, the landlady of the place they were staying at became suspicious when she no longer heard the baby crying. The police were brought in and questioned the parents, who claimed that the infant was being cared for by some friends. However, the inspector was not a very trusting man, and eventually he got Charles to confess to murder. Charles was arrested and sent to trial. He was found not guilty on the murder charge, but was convicted and sentenced to 5 years penal servitude for manslaughter. Wow. Number 2, bagged. Oh my god, that was disgusting. After committing a murder, some killers will go the extra mile or many miles to just get rid of the body, such as in a case in 1905 when human remains were discovered in an irrigation channel. Mr. Crawford, a channel guard, was making his rounds one day and walked along the banks of a channel in Garrigou, Victoria. He noticed a bran bag in the water and went to check it out. On opening the bag, he discovered the body parts of a human being, and the police were immediately contacted. The police uncovered a terrible sight. The torso was dressed in 2 shirts and disemboweled. The head was cut off, and both of the victim's legs had been cut off at the thighs. It was determined that the body parts had been in the water for about 2 months. Being that it was 1905, there was no way to identify the body, and it was assumed that it may have been a former resident from the Ranagan Basin. The case was just another mystery death, and the Marines were sent to the local coroner. Jesus Christ, my brother sent me 9 messages. And number 1, first he whacked her with a hammer. Have you ever dealt with someone who was so annoying that you pictured yourself doing some sort of bodily harm to that person? No? You? Not me. We all have those little dark fantasies now and again, but James Hazelton followed through with his urge back in 1909. I'm so sorry. Mr. Hazelton and his wife got into an argument in their home in New Haven, Connecticut. It was a stupid argument, like most, but then his wife began dreading up past offenses, and Hazelton could take no more of it. He grabbed a hammer and hit her over the head with it. She collapsed, and while she was blacked out, he grabbed a knife and stabbed her. Crap. After he was certain that she was dead, Mr. Hazelton stuffed her body in a large truck, which he then slept on top for several nights. Which he then slept on top for several nights. Finally, he threw a quilt over the top of the trunk and went on the run. After being captured in New York City, Mr. Hazelton confessed to the crime, saying, "Yes, I killed her because we could not get along together." Thank you all for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button down below. Right down below down here, okay? If you like my channel, you know what to do. Hit that big fat red subscribe button down below right here. Comment down below, and I'll see you all in my next video. No, seriously, I'll see you on my next video. Hope you enjoyed. See you guys. Peace.